Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Daily Freedom. I'm your host, Fernando Lopes, and today I have the pleasure and honor to be interviewing my new friend, Jesse Karras. Jesse is a general creative and philosopher who I met through a very fun way. We were attending a seminar on communication, masterful communicator, and you were there with the third day you brought one of your projects in. And that project is Laugh Shots. And then today you introduced me to a new project I didn't know you had, which is Have a Great Shit or Shot, depending on how you want to interpret that. The best bathroom book.
Yes.
And your other project would be Common Respect.
Yes.
Love for you to, I'm going to be asking questions regarding those. Thanks for saying that.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me onto your show. I like this. I like this informal kind of just relaxed setting. I feel like it's the in-between two ferns and hopefully not as hostile.
So hopefully, we're going to put our differences outside. The second time we chatted was at your home, and we were having such an amazing conversation. I said, man, can you imagine if for the last 40 minutes, other people could have heard what we just shared?
Absolutely.
Because I think we're having conversations that could inspire people to have more joy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why I absolutely took your invitation to come on here. And so this is great.
And talk about your future too, right? Your future of what you see with the things that you.
And so basically, what you've done with the invitation, it sounded like, you wanted to get my take on the future of things. And so, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit more, but also get your take on things because it feels, it's a collaborative effort in that way. So.
Yeah, totally. How about we talk a little bit about this book? Like, why did you start this
book? Well, the background on this book is very silly. I was watching a comedy special with Jim Jeffries, and he's talking about teaching his son how to shit. And at the same time, I had a book on my coffee table that said how to sit. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be funny if I did a book on how to shit? And it was just a crazy idea, and I act on my impulses with these crazy things. And so I just did a little bit of research, and there's a couple of books out there, and I just compiled a little bit of notes, and 6 months later, the book was done. That's all I know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I just kept researching it. It was funny. It was interesting. And it kept coming up to me that this is a really important subject. It's taboo. And I thought, I just had this way of approaching it that could be like accessible to people, funny, let's talk about something that's really important. So, it's very well researched. One of my
I just read something here.
No, I'm serious. When I pick this book up, I can't put it down because I start laughing too. But no, one of my friends is a doctor, and he actually wrote the foreword for it, and I got him to approve it. He went through everything in the book and he said everything's perfect. So I was real happy about that. But I also tried to put a lot of humor. I had no idea I was this punny until I wrote this book. It's filled with puns. It's a lot of fun. So it's been
Dr. Charles Hamori.
Yeah. So he's a local doctor and a great friend and a fellow burner too, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, he's a really great guy. And so I showed it to him, and he said, hey, it meets all this criteria.
Yeah, it says here, page 122, farts. People fart an average of 14 times a day. Only 1% of your fart cloud is stinky. A fart travels at 7 miles per hour. But SBD, silent but deadly variety of farts, are the result of bacterial fermentation that release methane and sulfur in your gut. Wow.
It's there.
Which is why it smells more. This is rich with data.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here. And, the one thing that I'm most proud of, obviously there's a lot of funny things in here, but the thing that I'm most proud of is this fiber chart, which didn't exist. I had to call the FDA and go through and compile all this stuff. And so basically if somebody's aiming for, an ideal fiber, this categorizes it by the amount of fiber in each food, which wasn't really easily accessible. So I'm proud of that. But it's just a fun book, and I did all the illustrations myself. So that was, it's.
Wow, you're a great drawer.
Thanks.
Great artist. Awesome. And so you mentioned burner. So people that don't know what a burner is.
Burning Man. So I have a history with Burning Man. I was just telling you, I was there in 2004, 8, 10, and 18 was my most recent year. I have some great experiences there. And as I told you, I actually got married at Burning Man in 2008. So that was quite a trip. It was a lark. My partner, we're no longer together, but my partner at the time, we just decided to elope, and that way it would just be easy to take care of, like, not having to invite everybody. But it was a really interesting experience on the playa. Lots of people came together, lots of interesting synergy. So it was a really unique and fun experience.
Yeah. And for people that don't know what Burning Man is, what is Burning Man?
Oh, wow. That's a trick.
Sorry.
How much time do we have? No, the nice thing
is not Burning Man.
Well, the nice thing is a lot of people understand what Burning Man is. There was a time when I went in 2004 when nobody knew what Burning Man was, or very few people, and so I got into this whole script of explaining each part of it. But I think I'll just say, a lot of people know about it, but I think the thing that was transformative for me and got me to really see things in a different way, kind of like when I saw the movie The Matrix. After that, it kind of warped my reality for a little while. I was like, oh, is this real? That kind of thing. But the decommodification or something along that lines, I forget exactly how they phrase it, but it's the gifting, the idea that you just gift without an exchange. So most people think of gifting, they think of barter, like, well, I'll give you this, and then now I'm going to wait for something in return. And when you experience a week of people just coming up to you and sharing things with you without any attachment, it really activates something in you to like think of ways to do that with other people. And that really was strong with me, because that it's like, oh, well, I'm here to share my gifts, not to exchange, wait for something in return. And it's not, I don't see that as like at odds with capitalism. Like you could say, well, we should get out the system. I just see it as complementary to that, like in the sense that, we can be generous with our time or with our energy and with our money, and with gifts, and not look to receive all the time, and the joy that can bring to give somebody gifts. So that to me was the most transformative thing. And it's one of those things you can talk about it all you want, but when you're at Burning Man, you experience that, it kind of rewires how you think about things. And like I said, so that year that I went, and every subsequent year, I really put a lot of effort into try to bring things that would bring people joy and happiness when I shared it with them. And it worked. It was great. One year I loaded up a big thing of horchata. So I brought horchata to the playa and put the ice in this, and then I forgot sugar there. I was like, oh, I forgot to bring the sugar. And I just walked into the camp, and the guy just gave me a whole thing of sugar. It's like, here you go. And it was just like everything comes together. And then people are hot and dry out on the playa, and suddenly there's this guy that shows up with a 5-gallon thing, of ice horchata, and they're like, where did you come from? Where have you been? All this, it's like awesome.
What is horchata?
Horchata is a Mexican rice drink that I'm very familiar with, and very
delicious.
Delicious, yes. And then other years I brought red vines, just handing out red vines, and people would love that. And one year, the most recent year I went, it was hand lotion. Like you just bring hand lotion and everyone's skin is dry, and they're just so thankful for that. They're just looking for little ways. But then, I think one of the things about Burning Man that's cool is Burning Man's its own little microcosm, and it's not realistic in a lot of ways. It doesn't transfer completely obviously to the real world. We don't operate that way, but you can bring parts of it to that, and so you can look for ways to give people gifts or joy, and things like that. And so that was my takeaway from Burning Man.
Yeah, same here. The gifting was huge for me, to be walking in the middle of the desert and all of a sudden seeing a party with, say, a car that was transformed into, say, a coffee mug. Like I remember right now. Yeah. So it's a coffee mug and a huge coffee mug with 2 people inside, and the coffee mug is moving, and they're giving out bulletproof coffee, like the ghee with coconut oil, and experiencing gifts. And I remember using sticky notes. Do you have a playa name?
Coconut.
Of course your playa name is Coconut. I'll ask you in a minute why. And if it was chosen or given.
It was chosen, actually, but I'll explain that.
Okay. So my playa name is Love Letter.
Love Letter. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll come up to people with a sticky note like this and a pen and say, can I write you a love letter? Or would you like a love letter? Do you love letters? And then say yes. And I'll be like, is it okay if it's participatory? That's you and I that create it. And you go, yes. So I would write the words without them seeing it. One thing I love about myself is ... And I'll give it to them and say, okay, now you finish the love letter.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. So it's people like you that make Burning Man like fantastic. It's no, look, like all I need to do is come across like 2 or 3 people like you at Burning Man, and I'm like, man, I had the best burn. Seriously, because it's that kind of magic. It's that kind of disruptive in a good way. It disrupts you out of your, this idea of humanity or yourself or how you relate to other people. And Burning Man is really, it's just one opportunity. Obviously, we can do that in the real world. It's just you're going to be met with some resistance initially, like what's going on here? What's the what are you up to? What's your agenda? Whereas at Burning Man, it's assumed that you don't have that agenda. It's assumed that every camp that you walk up to, you're going to be invited in. You see what I'm saying? It's just a given. Whereas in the real world, they call it the default world that we're in. It's kind of like, well, if I walk up to a camp, if I was at a KOA or something and I walk up to the camp and go, hey, can I join you guys? Yeah, they might be cool with it, but they might be like, well, what's going on? This guy's a little forward. Whereas Burning Man, a lot of that's out of the way. And that creates a lot of that, that ability to go deeper, quicker. And I love that project. It's great. The love letter. And then that's your name. It's like right there in your name. And so it's always an opportunity to just keep doing that activity. I love it. That's great.
Totally. And what I notice also about Burning Man is that people, they embody personality types, or they embody ways of being that is I've never seen before. So the container, the framing, the context for Burning Man, I think it's rich for people that want to say elevate or grow in ways they didn't do before because of context or location or environment. So in Burning Man, I think is a fertile environment for transformation or exploration of experimentation. Like you want to experiment something, go to Burning Man and bring your own set of intentions, or allow your mind to do something you never expected before. And tell me about the coconut. Why coconut?
I was just eating coconut on the playa one day, and I hadn't really,
of course, you were in the middle of the desert. No resources.
And this was, to be fair, this was like 2010, so this is before coconut had its moment. There was a point where about 2011 or 12 where everything was coconut, and like coconut was this big fashion thing. So I was like,
became avocado.
Yeah, exactly. I was coconut before coconut was coconut.
Okay.
No, it was just like it just resonated with me, and I thought it's a sweet little name. And I had a bunch of like costumes that had like this fake rabbit fur on it and stuff like that, and so just very white looking, and it just resonated with my person, because other people had tried to give me names and they just weren't quite landing. I was like, okay, thanks for the but anyway, so that was my thing, is coconuts.
Speaking of rabbit ears, did you ever see the it's the walk of the bunnies? They go from center camp to the man.
No, I haven't seen it.
So it happens every year. It's a parade.
Okay,
it's a bunny parade.
Okay.
And then I experienced then a second group. The first time I saw them, I experienced a second group. So a lot of people with white ears, bunny ears, or dressed as bunnies with onesies or other costumes. And then there was a second group, and they were all orange. These people were dressed as carrots.
I love it.
And they had signs like, let's be friends. Let's be friends. Don't eat us. Let's be. It is really cool. Well, hundreds of people like marching, group of bunnies in a group of carrots like right behind them.
Well, and I like those opportunities, because you can do social commentary and you can do it in a form of play, and that's why that event. And Burning Man isn't the only opportunity for that. There's other regional events, and there's even smaller friendship type of things that you can go to. Camping trips and things that you can bring these elements. You don't have to go to the big burn. It's a big commitment to get out there. It's a lot of dust. It's not for everybody. But I resonate with that event. What resonates with me is just the freedom to be silly. I love the absurd. I'm always attracted to the absurd. I love that one camp that's called Safety Third. It's just like things like that, like are just like it resonates with me. Not everybody, but and so I do try to think about ways to bring that into the world. And this book is part of that. This is kind of an absurd idea, so it's funny, it's silly.
And then it seems like it's absurd within, or in a context that is sustainable. So it's like a sustainable absurd.
Yeah, well, it has a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
And the same thing, you mentioned laugh shots, and obviously that's just it's a photo booth business, but I'm trying to bring into that, people's ability to play in the absurd. So it's got a bunch of, silly props and things like that. And I'm always amazed at the prop combinations, like hats on top of wigs and glasses and this and that. And I like that people feel free to play in that realm. And so I want to create more opportunities for people to do that in this world. I think that, sometimes we can get a little too serious. We can look around, we might get frustrated at the way things are in the world. And, we can plan to work through those things as a society and as individuals. I think it's really important, but it's also important to take time, I think, to play and find our joy, because that's what fuels us to keep going forward. And if we're doing our mission well, and we're having fun doing that mission, we're going to attract other people to do it with us. Like I said, if you want something to happen and you're attacking the other person because they're not going along with what you're doing, the inverse of that is that you're having so much fun doing what you're doing that you want to attract them into what you're doing, because it's so fulfilling and they want part of what you're doing. So it's just a different way of looking at things.
Totally.
And that leads me to my other project, which is Common Respect. And that, to me, that project is about, it's initially getting people on the left and the right together in this country, the conservatives and the liberals, that kind of thing. And I've been looking at that. It was just an idea, so I put that together as a website with a pledge on it. And the pledge is to speak with respect, listen to understand, and seek positive outcomes. So that's the idea behind it. But as this project, I launched this about in June. As the project's going on, I'm also revisiting it and rethinking about that message and how to get people more together. And I realized that one of the things I want to do with that project is add more humor, add more levity to it. Because if we're always just working on, we need to figure this out, we're missing the opportunity to just be human with each other, sit down and have a conversation and just enjoy each other's company. I think people are going to be much more receptive to hearing your point of view when you're just real with them, when you just accept them for who they are. And so that's been a journey in that sense. And I'm trying to bring some of that levity, that joy, that spontaneity, that silliness into that project right now. So that's where I am with that.
I love that a lot. Reminds me of when you talked about fun, reminds me the book Essentialism. Are you familiar?
No.
So this book talks about how it's important to know what is essential in one's life or one's values. Okay. So one can say no to most things in life. So he or she can say yes to very few things. And one of the things the author, one of the last chapters, mentions as essential is fun. It's not a bonus in his view. It's not like a privilege. It's essential, as in like life. Yeah, like to that level. And so so when you mentioned like to bring levity and fun, it reminded me of that.
It's important. We all like to play. We all like to have fun, and we're all seeking that permission. And I think sometimes we feel the gravity of the importance of conquering big issues. We're if you're tuning into the media a lot, you're reminded that there's big issues. How can you possibly stop what you're doing and have fun when there's all these problems happening or things to solve? And I think that connection, levity, and laughter are the way to solve the problems. They're not just they're not an avoidance thing. They're not a way to hide from it. It's the opposite. That'll give you the energy and attract people to your cause. And when you're seeking that commonality and listening and like I said, it's a balance of things. But I completely agree with that. Like the fun and the humor and the joy is what it's all about. And some people are stuck in figuring out how to find that. But I think that it's more accessible than we think. It's really just a mindset. It's as I see it, it's not a set of circumstances. It's more of a decision and a belief system.
Okay. Yeah. So deciding to see the other person as a human being and respect their views, and then connect.
Connect
on mainly on the things that are where they overlap, or where the values overlap. I remember you mentioning the percentage. I believe that most people are actually not opposing, even though they might be one left, the other one right, liberal, conservative. That most people in the US actually, they agree more with one another than disagree.
And what's really interesting about that's absolutely true. And then what's more interesting, one of the statistics I put on one of the little ad campaigns I was doing for the website, it references a study from Common Ground. It's an organization, and if you Google search it, it's called Hidden Tribes, and it's this extensive, it's like 50 or 100 pages long, and it does really deep dive into the fact that America is not red or blue. We actually have 7 different segments according to the way that they're doing it. And there's all sorts of variations in between there, and there's overlaps in lots of areas. So this idea that there's a left and a right in this country is just extremely misleading. And it's also what's causing a lot of this, so it's like, if you're left and I'm right, it reminds me of the Dr. Seuss, the Sneetches, one had stars and one didn't. It's like, it's not like that. It's like, there's a whole spectrum of beliefs. Some people who you would consider one thing are not the other. And the one thing I tell people, one of the real interesting statistics is that there were 8 million people who voted for Obama that voted for Trump. So 8 million people. Well, how do we classify people that vote one way or the other like that? And so it just shows that there's a lot of complexity in our belief systems, and to not generalize, not characterize, not allow people to speak and find out where they're coming from. Can be really interesting, enlightening. You can learn a lot just by listening to where people are coming from. And most of the time, when I have conservative friends and I have liberal friends, and when I listen to my conservative friend points of view, I find myself nodding on a lot of things, going, yeah, that's great. And then it helps me, to share the information back and forth. So when I talk to my liberal friends and I share with them perspectives from the conservative friends, then it's like, hey, maybe there's some compromise here. How does this look when, maybe we can integrate some of these things more, or have more of an appeal to one way or the other, because, I think that's a really good thing to look at it, and to stop generalizing each other as one or the other. We're complex people. Hopefully you're a complex person, and, you have ideas that maybe don't fit completely in line with one political ideology or the other. And I think that's a sign of respect. That's why my project is called Common Respect. It's like the respect is in the listening and how we talk about each other. And that's another thing, calling somebody a Trumpy, or somebody a liberal, a bleeding heart liberal. Those things are, pejoratives that don't really help connect. They stereotype people in one way or the other. So I'm just trying to give people the opportunity to take that down a few levels, reconnect with each other, and look for ways to affect positive change. The slogan of that project is "Positive change starts with you." So, and I really believe that. And so even one-on-one, we can all start affecting a positive change. I think that's a really important message that I've internalized, is that, even if you're out shopping somewhere, you have the ability to change the world right there in the interaction with how you interact with the person who's checking you out at the line, or letting somebody in front of you go in front of you if you have more stuff than they do. Things like that, you can really affect change on an individual level, and that it feels good. I mean, we're wired to be communal, and that feels good. I mean, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, totally. And I think what a huge aha from what you shared and Masterful Communicator, when you presented about common respect, was that there are more people that are actually, they respect one another than not. And perhaps the news, or that the news I've heard, it might be saying the opposite, but data says that more people actually agree than disagree on common values, on how to go about things. And it's very few people that are disagreeing in the grand scheme of things. And that was very refreshing. You never heard that before. So let's say it's 10 years in the future. and common respect has taken a life of its own, and people have decided to do something that they'll be proud of for their kids, for their grandkids. What does the some of the results or some of the milestones that have been achieved look like, in your opinion, for what you see for the people in the US as having more common respect in politics?
Just exactly that. A lot of common respect, a lot of just understanding and realizing that people can hold different beliefs, and we're not going to attack them. We're not going to defriend them. They're not going to ostracize them if they have a different point of view. We respect that, and we seek to understand what that comes from. It doesn't mean that we don't act on what's important to us, and it doesn't mean that we don't act with even a lot of intensity behind what's important to us. It just means that we don't cast the other aside. We don't cast somebody as somebody who's not worth our time. That to me is important. That we do find ways to work together, and more importantly, like I said, I think that we seek to work on projects in ways that are productive for society in general. And I think that's what most people want, honestly, but they're a little bit stuck on how to get there. I think, when social networking turned to social media, and the social media then had the algorithms that were designed to keep us engaged through generally negative information. And this is common knowledge. Most people know about this now. It's widely reported on, but I think we're still stuck as far as what the future of that looks like. So that's not something that my project addresses. Like, how do we fix social media, or disentangle media from those algorithms in that way that we consume it? But I do think that, and one of the campaigns that, I have a couple of little ads that I put with common respect. The other one is don't click the rage bait, and that's something. So in that way, it's like, the media will do what it's going to do, and there's always going to be incentive for, if it bleeds, it leads, because that gets our attention. We have a negativity bias that, things that are negative, we remember it, and we want to find out what's going on. And that makes sense biologically for us to do that. But I think also my hope would be that people will become better consumers of news, that we're critical thinkers, that we process information, we slow things down a little bit, we look a little bit deeper, we question ourselves. Self-awareness is a real cool thing, I think, and that we can recognize. It's a tall order too. You got to do a lot of work to be at a level of self-awareness to realize, oh, these are my shortcomings. This is my ego talking. I step back. But on the other side of that is like, when you can really get there, it's really freeing, because then you're not a slave to what other people are telling you, and you're not a slave to your own negativity or your own biases. You can kind of step past that. You can recognize, oh, this is my ego talking. This is, and better connect with people, I think. So that would be my hope.
And were you always say conscientious or calm or peaceful, or did you have a turning point where you went through a transformation?
Well, I've gone through lots of transformations in my life, and I'm an only kid, so I had a lot of time to sit and think about this kind of stuff. But let's see. Yeah, there's been a lot of like small moments, but I think one of the biggest moments for me more recently was that I had a divorce. I was in a divorce in 2018, and it wasn't something that I expected was going to happen. I expected to be with this person for the rest of my life, and so that when that trajectory happened, I was very committed at the time that the divorce was part of my life, but I didn't want it to define my life. So I had to do a lot of research in that, and I wanted to make peace with it. I wanted to understand it, and I wanted to come out of that as a growth opportunity rather than something that would constantly, when people talked about, their exes and how they hate them and this and that, I didn't want to be in that realm. So what that allowed me to do is think about, like, divorce in general, Like, so one of the things I ended up running a divorce support group. I went to this group on Meetup, and I really liked the people at the group, and the organizer stopped showing up and paying the dues. So I'm like, I guess I'll take it over.
Wow.
So, and then at that same time, I got this great book it's called Rebuilding When Your Relationship Ends. It's a fantastic book. It's for people who are going through it could be any type of relationship, or it could be a marriage, or just a relationship. It's also for people dealing with grief, maybe a loss of a loved one, something like that. And that book, allowed me to grow and see things in a more healthy way. And so now I look back at that moment, that fracture of my old paradigm as a real positive thing. It really brought me to be more self-expressed and meet a lot of great people along the way. So I'm actually quite, I look back at that moment, and I'm thankful that happened, because it taught me a lot of understanding on preconceptions. It also showed me like another side of grief that I hadn't really experienced up to that point, because like I said, it wasn't something that I planned, and so I had to do a lot of processing. And thankfully I have an amazing mom and amazing dad who I call them, all hours of the night. And I probably did 2 hours of therapy every day for 6 months between the two of them. And I worked through it all, and they were fantastic with just, listening to me. But it also gave me an understanding where other people can be in the grieving process. And so now when I come across somebody who's grieving, I have on anything, I think I have a much more of an understanding of what they're going through, or at least more of a feeling that, no, like, I know it's right for you, and this is what will work, just to be with people and not try to change them or minimize their grief. I think, for me and for other people I've met, oftentimes when somebody is in a grieving state, the first response is, it's going to be okay. Look on the bright side, that kind of thing. And that's the total opposite. When you're in a grieving mode, you need somebody who's just going to listen to you, be there with you, and ask you how they can best serve you. And so that was a good experience for me to come to that realization.
That's wonderful. And really, I love the topic of relationships. From that book, or from what you say, if you could share one or two pieces of advice from the book, or from what you learned about your divorce.
Well, the book has this fantastic illustration. They have these little stick figures, right? And they show the different types of relationships as stick figures. So like, like one of the stick figures, they'll be joined at the arm, but they'll be facing in opposite directions. And so they have I forget all the names for it, but that's one where they're connected, but they're kind of in opposite directions. There's one where one is down on their knees and the other looking up. And so there's this kind of like, this, and all of these dynamics are like, and I'm trying to think of the name of that one, but it's like the worshiping one or something, where there's it works because the other person is putting the other person on a pedestal. And then there's like 6 or 8 of them. But the one that the author promotes as the most healthy is when both partners are standing across from each other, but they're kind of like locking arms. And that means that both people are healthy on their own, but they're choosing to be with each other. And that to me is you're not, because one of them was also like an A-frame where they're both dependent on each other. So if one falls, there's always that dynamic, and there's nothing wrong with any of these dynamics. And they can be very comforting, but I think there is something, really powerful about when both people can stand there and freely choose to be with each other, rather than have it as a need or a completing of the other person, things like that. Because when those dynamics happen, there's a great opportunity for disappointment. When you're relying on somebody, if they don't meet your expectations, then it's like, oh, then this can't work, or it can be problematic. And so that to me is the ideal dynamic. And so that book really illustrated that literally
with stick figures.
Yeah, it was really cool. So if you ever get a chance, I don't know if it's easy to Google, but yeah, it's a great book.
Awesome. It reminded me of the book Attached.
Oh, okay.
Are you familiar?
Is it Attachment Styles?
Yeah.
Okay, I know of it, but I haven't read it. Okay.
Yeah, it reminded me of that book.
And that's all those things in relationships in general. Understanding love languages is great. The attachment styles are great. And just communication styles, like understanding that about people and wanting the best for people, not wanting necessarily what's always right for you. I think that can be really freeing for somebody, because maybe at the end of the day, the person that you're with is going to do better if they're not with you, and vice versa. And so to always be open to that possibility, but also working towards what you want together. But at a certain, if it's no longer a match, recognizing that. And I don't really have any advice for that other than just to say, coming up with regular communications and things like that. One of the things that came up that I wanted to share in as far as relationships go in that one that we went to in the Masterful Communicator is in the evening, Carrie Margaret, who's a great coach, counselor. She had the topic for her dinner event that evening was sex and relationships. And so I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I'm always interested in relationships. So I asked everybody around the table, what was your favorite relationship advice? And one gentleman said that, he and his partner would say each night they'd say what they appreciated about each other, what they were withholding from each other, and what they wanted to create together. And I thought that's a great way to communicate. You don't have to do it maybe every night, maybe once a week or something like that. But the idea is that you regularly check in with each other. And so these things don't go unsaid. And I liked the withholding exercise particularly because it can go either way. Like I withheld a positive thing. Like when you were at the store and you gave that person an extra, I didn't say anything, but I thought that was cool. And it also could be like, I'm withholding a concern about something and it just creates a really nice dynamic, I think. So regular communication with friends and partners, I think is also helpful.
Wonderful. Could you talk a little bit about after you had the 6 months of therapy of 2 hours a day with your parents?
Yeah.
And perhaps you decided to start dating again or be in a relationship. What was the transition like? And coming from the point of view of, I see you as a very loving, caring person. And so from the point of view of men or even women watching, listening, they can hear what you went through because you told me a little bit about what's been happening in your life. And I'm very happy for you.
Thanks.
So what happened in the transition that you could see other men or women, people that just went through divorce, doing when they are ready to find a partner again or start dating again?
Well, for me, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because that was another project that I was working on. It didn't come to any fruition, but it was I was working on a project for helping men relate better with women. Because I was having success in that realm, in meeting female friends and connecting with them, and it was going really well for me. And then I would talk with other men who were really struggling with it, and so I just did a lot of research with it, and I enlisted the help of both my male friends and my female friends to kind of come up with a summary of it. And I ended up sharing that information at a couple men's groups actually. And people generally liked it. I just never transitioned it into something that is it a book or something that I regularly do. But the idea was for men in particular, it's to take the expectations off the table for sex, relationships, for anything like that, and to really, I use a sales analogy, and it sounds kind of awkward with dating or relationships. How does sales equate? But a really good salesman or salesperson would be somebody who really focuses on what your needs are. Because if I want you to buy something that I have, I'm going to find out what your needs are, get your needs met, or show you ways that my services could be a fit for you, rather than this is what I want, or asking for the sale or getting, greedy about it, things like that. So I just kind of use that analogy, and for the men that I shared it with, it was really helpful. So, it was like, oh yeah, I'll put my attention on the other person and their needs. Obviously, you have to take care of your own needs as well, and so there is that limit in finding that space. But generally speaking, when you come back from, coming back to our Burning Man thing, when you come from more of a place of generosity, I think people are more likely to be generous back to you. And when you come from a place of what's in it for me, or the exchange has to be even, right? Like, back to the barter thing, well, I'll give you this, but then I expect that. Well, that's got expectations in it. And one of the things that I discovered years ago was that unmet expectations are the root cause of most anger and anguish that I found. And so if you can minimize those expectations that you place on other people, that really, it helps them to be more free and want to come and to explore what you have to say, or your offerings, or what your needs are. So that's really helpful. And one of the things I'll say more about that is that, you asked me before this interview what book changed my life, and that was The Loving What Is. And that book to me is about minimizing your expectations, more specifically about people. But expecting that people are going to be the way that they are is a really hard thing for most people to do. And I'll say that again, expecting people to be who they are is extremely difficult, but it's so obvious. I mean, for me to expect you to do something other than what you're going to do is crazy making, right? I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's how most of us operate. And so I think letting go of those programs and accepting people for where they are, it doesn't mean we can't work to help people see things the way that we want them to see, but it just means that we're going to recognize that people are their own personalities, their own people.
How much hope is there for then newly divorced people?
Well, I think it's a process. For me, it was definitely, you have to give yourself time. They say there's a ratio of how long you've been together versus how long you need to heal. I think we all know when that time is there. And if we have friends, they might let us know, hey, it's time to move on. But I think part of that grieving is also just letting yourself grieve. And that's where, again, that book comes in really well. It's actually split into 10 chapters. And you can do it as a group. When I took over the divorce support group, we had like 10 or 15 people, and we decided to do it it's designed to be done as a 10-week workshop. So each week you work through each of the stages of grief to get to the point where you're free again, through your relationships and otherwise. And that was really good. So just recognizing that it's a process, and that, the other thing I'll just say about divorce in general is that, prior to my divorce, I looked at people who were divorced I looked at it as a failure. Divorce is a failure. It's a failure and I've come to see it as not as a failure, but as a sign of growth and change. And if you as an individual said, hey, Jesse, I'm doing a lot of growing and changing, I'd say, wow, Fernando, tell me about it. But the problem is that when two people do a lot of growing and changing, sometimes it's uneven and it creates a split. But it doesn't negate the fact that the growing and changing was taking place. So I came to realize that not all of it is equal, and not all of it happens linear. And sometimes that needs to happen in a different way. But so that's how I've come to see that anyway.
I remember meeting two couples. The first one was in Florida. A friend of mine and her ex, they have a annual celebration, and it's their divorce date. And then the second couple at Burning Man went to one of their parties and was their divorce celebration. So they meet once a year to celebrate their divorce, and it's friends, and it's love, and it's party. It was like, wow. This is amazing.
Yeah.
This is amazing, how people can take relationships to a level that I didn't know existed.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, think about those people that were doing those celebrations, right? You have this time period, and let's not even call it a marriage or any type of relationship that ends. There is that moment when you decide to be in a relationship together where there's a lot of value and there's a lot of growing together, and you're learning a lot, and you're having a lot of fun and all that. And to negate all that, it'd be just because that growth was uneven at the end and you needed to go your separate ways. To negate that is a missed opportunity, I think. And so maybe that's what I think when you're sharing that celebration, it's like you're celebrating all that joy that you did have together. Why? Yeah. Why not? And now you're in a new phase, and that's great. It doesn't need to negate that. But I also recognize that, that might be the ideal. And if people don't do that, I wouldn't judge them for that. That's a lot of work, and that's a pretty special situation. I don't know. I personally don't know anybody that has done that, but cool for them for doing that.
Yeah, indeed. How about we talk a little bit in the next few minutes about the projects that you're having. So we have Laugh Shots, you have this book, Have a Great Shit, and Common Respect.
Yeah.
Who are some of the people that you love to connect with to say, so, be part of the vision for any of these three?
Well, that's a great opening question. So I'm working on a letter to Michael Moore right now. Michael Moore is a very influential podcaster. He's got a podcast called Rumble, and he's got like 1 million or some people that listen to it every week. And I like to listen to all types of stuff: conservative, liberal, middle of the road, libertarian. I just like to understand where people are coming from. So I listen to his show, and I think that he's got a really big heart. But what I do notice about it is that sometimes he refers to us and them, the left and the right. He's, for anyone that doesn't know, Michael Moore is definitely more on the left than on the right as a spectrum. But I think that he's missing an opportunity when he frames it as us and them. Sometimes he'll refer to the voters, like there's more liberal voters than conservatives. So we got to do this. There's more us and them. And I think that I wanted to share with him my project and invite him to not see it as an us them type of situation. That, if you can still fight for your ideals, but you don't have to fight against people. You can fight for what you want and invite other people to become part of that. And that's why, Common Respect is really about speak with respect. You can talk about Trump voters, if you're Michael Moore, in a way that's respectful, that doesn't disparage them, and that lets them feel welcome to come to your ideas. They might stay in the conservative realm, but on some issues, they might be like, I'm going to get behind Michael Moore. But because he labels us and them, well, there's no room for me to come into the them. I'm over here. You just told me I'm over here. And I don't want to maybe fully come into what you're doing, but I stand behind what you believe. And so I kind of want to create this environment. He says he reads all of his emails. And so I'm like, I'm going to write a good one. So I've been working on that for the past 2 days. And so I'll probably send it in the next couple.
That's amazing. How about Laugh Shots? Who would be someone that you could connect with to advance the Laugh Shot business?
Laugh Shots is just like I said, it's a fun side business that I've started. It's a take off of my original photo booth, which is just a camera in a screen that sat in a corner and it had a bunch of props on it. This is totally different. As you saw, it moves around on a tripod. It's got all the props on it. So, suddenly you're at a party and you look, and right behind you, the photo booth has found you. It comes to you kind of thing. So it's got that neat element to it. And I just like to bring that to more events, probably like weddings, I think would be a good opportunity, or parties, things like that, where people, where there's a lot of activity and it's got a lot of lights and fun stuff, as you saw. So it's just my enjoyment. And I also made that particular one. The old one used to have a lot of expensive equipment in a photo printer that sat there. So it was expensive. I had to charge more. This one is very inexpensive. And so I like that the price point's lower, so that, I can hopefully have it at more events. And ideally, I'd like to have many of these around, or even in other cities where people can be working it and having fun with it, making a little bit of money on the side. But for the most part, it's just fun going to the events and having people just smile and laugh around you. I mean, who's not going to want to do that? So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
How about the project of this book, Have a Great Shop?
No, that's cool.
Who would be a great person for you to connect with to support you on this project?
Well, that project, this has been fun too. And I recently did a little campaign with my dad, where I had him dress up as Santa, and the caption was "Ho ho, holy crap!" So and he's sitting in my bathroom reading this book, and so I'm just showing it for fun. It's anybody who finds the subject interesting, or maybe has issues with it, or maybe has friends or relatives. It's actually just a really good bathroom book more than anything. It's you can just pop it open and read a couple pages and get a laugh. But also, if you sat down and really wanted to understand, like I said, it is doctor approved, so it does go through all the things.
Chapter 3: pain in the ass, constipation, immediate relief, laxatives, prevention. So good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, And none of these projects I'm like they're fun things for me to do. I don't feel like the need to necessarily hustle them in that way. Like I'm just putting them out there, and if people find it fun, that's great. That's fun for me. I just want to keep it interesting and cool that way. And so, and like I said, I really like what you're doing and all this stuff too. Like, this project is great. And when I see this, and I've been listening to your podcast, I'm just like totally excited about this. And yeah, I don't know, like what's your vision for the end game on this? And have you?
Yeah, totally. So the end game for me is to have kids grow up in a world where most adults are role models. So wherever the kids are, whether they are in the house, outside of the house, playing in the neighborhood, that adults are role models. And I believe for adults to be role models, they might want to do some work, make decisions to leave the past in the past. So release traumas. And or process, or be in the moment, be here now, and create and look towards the future, and realize how parents' feelings and what they go through get passed down to the children. And if parents want better children, healthier children at the spiritual, mental, emotional, physical levels, then it's partly starts with them. Even though the child will become an adult and will be their own sovereign being, that if the parents, which most parents do love their children with all their heart and unconditional love, that to realize they cannot hide things from children, even if they're not speaking it, that children are getting the energy from the parents, and then the child will process. If the parent is not doing it, their work, the child will do it, either by sickness or by being rebellious, something, so that's my end goal, is to bring wellness to people.
So what kind of hosts or what kind of guests do you want to have on your show, and what do you hope to get from them?
It would be people that have a vision and a future that will that align with kids being the future, and who must I become so kids naturally grow up to have better problems, that kids will have different upgraded problems.
Okay.
That's when I become a father, that's what I want for them. For them not to have my problems, for them to have new, better problems.
Oh, that's wow, very remarkable. I love that. And so what is there any particular guests in mind that you would love to have in your show?
Oh yeah. My goodness. Let's start, with the big ones. Tim Ferriss.
Okay, sure.
Elon Musk.
Okay.
Tim Cook. Let's start with the guy Jeff Bezos. Let's start with the guys that are been in the news. And because I believe they are role models to some people. So I think it'll be very cool to have them on the show, and people like you. That it's living an amazing life with time, which is, I think, the most precious currency.
And that's a good perspective as well. Yeah. I would love to hear what those people would have to say on your show, because oftentimes when we listen to them, they're more in a controlled environment, or the questions are very can
I pause for a second?
Yeah.
All right. Hang on, let me pause this for a second.